Hello, welcome back to Let's Talk Title with Emerald Coast Title Services. I'm the president of ECTS and host, Dion Moniz, and we have
Ashley Bowen. I'm a licensed title agent and director of operations.
So today we're going to do a supplement to our last podcast episode where we talked about what we call the Surfside legislation or the new condo building safety law, which was Senate Bill 4D. So since that episode, they have actually updated the condo rider for both the CRISP and the FAR contracts. So we're going to go through that and let you know what changes they made and why they're important. So let's start with FAR. Actually, the changes between both are the same. So
they've just added some governance forms to these that you have to comply with.
Yeah, because the biggest question we've been getting since doing our last podcast episode is, well, how are the buyers going to be protected going forward with this new law that's in place? How are the buyers going to know whether a milestone inspection's been done and what the SEERS, which is the Structural Integrity Reserve Study report, shows? And so they've taken care of that. It's now part of the contract.
So now the seller, the buyer is entitled to receive from the seller a copy of the milestone inspection report and the Structural Integrity Reserve Study, the SERS. So that's something else that the seller gets to put together and have ready for whenever they're selling their condo.
Yep. So that's another obligation on the seller that has to be provided prior to closing. And obviously, the buyer then gets the opportunity to review that and make a decision on proceeding. Now, interestingly, it doesn't give a timeline in the addendum as to how long the buyer gets to review the report before deciding whether to proceed or not with the contract.
Well, and it doesn't say anything in here about and buyer can get out. And so I'm assuming that the report needs to be given whenever the rest of the condo docs are given.
Yeah, I would agree. Even though it's not quite clear in the additions that they made on the addendum or the rider, depending on which contract you're using. But yes, I would say it must be submitted with the rest of the condo docs and then that typical window that the buyer has.
It's the 3 days.
Yeah.
The buyer has 3 days to review the rest of the condo docs.
Yep. So now under Section 10 for both addenda, whether it's CRISP or FAR, Section 10 now has, previously it was just
the governance form, which you guys always, I hope that you're attaching to your contracts.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to. You should. Yeah, it's strongly advised that you do. We actually had a situation come up where the rider was not produced.
And it was an out, probably.
Yeah.
Or they tried to use it as an out at least. Did it work?
It did work.
Okay.
Because it was finally, the agent realized that it wasn't provided at the beginning of the contract stage, and it was provided literally a day or two before closing. And the buyer said, nope, I want out. And the seller tried to argue that the timeline had passed. And I said, well, actually, no, the clock doesn't start until you produce the documents pursuant to the rider. And so anyway, if you're doing the condo, make sure you include the rider immediately with the contract and then provide those documents as soon as possible thereafter to start that clock. So now in addition to the governance form, you've got the milestone inspection report,
which you need
to
get
report.
Both of those last two items you're going to need to get from the HOA.
Yes.
The governance form, you just have it as a part of your condo or your contract documents and Form Simplicity, wherever you pull them from. But these reports are going to have to come from the HOA. So the seller is going to need to be in contact with his association once he decides that he's going to list.
Yep, exactly. And so if you missed our last episode, we went through and explained the milestone inspection report and the SERS study. So go back and catch that. But actually, let's remind everyone on when it really becomes effective and when the condos have to start or the associations have to start having this information or the inspections scheduled. It's January, right? Of next year, 2024?
I believe that all of the reports have to happen if the condo was, it's when the condo becomes 30 years of age, and all condos that are already 30 years of age have until December 31st of this year to get the report done. Most of our condos are going to be over the 30 years, most of them here.
Yeah. And that's what I meant. For the condos that are already at that age, which in our area, probably the majority of them are,
I would say so.
So yeah, it's the 25 or 30 years old, depending on how many miles of the coast.
And I've
coastal
heard
control line
that
you're in.
there have been lots of new engineering firms popping up in the state of Florida.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a good time to be a structural engineer. All right. So hopefully that sheds a little more light. We were pontificating when we did our podcast episode that there would be some changes to the contract writer. And sure enough, they must have listened to our podcast and heard us because they've made the changes.
I did want to mention, though, that it does say that because most of those reports, none of them are really due yet until December 31st of this year. So most of the condos are not going to have these reports done. And so it does say in the contract now that they either have to provide the report or a statement that the association has not completed the structural integrity reserve study. So there also could be a statement from the association that study hasn't been done that can be provided with the contract. And then the hurdle that we're going to jump through is, are lenders going to accept that statement?
Yeah, so at least from now until December, there's going to be a gap of time where
nobody knows. But we know it's coming.
Right.
And so it might scare some lenders.
Or buyers.
And buyers.
Yeah. So you might see a lot of buyers waiting until December to really start shopping for that condo they want, to make sure that they know what the milestone report is going to show or doesn't show, and then what the Sears study shows. So something to keep in mind if you're in the market for a condo, you might want to wait until December when these reports are required, and the seller has to then provide them to the buyer. All right. Well, anything else on that little supplement?
We just scared everybody. No,
I think we're here to educate, so hopefully we educated a little bit. But we're happy to provide this supplement to our last episode, and as always, we'd love for you to follow us either on our YouTube channel, or subscribe on our YouTube channel, or follow us on any of our podcast channels, which is Google, Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud,
and Amazon,
or Amazon. Just Google us, you'll find it. Let's Talk Title with Emmer Coast Title Services, and you'll find us. All right, well, thanks for now. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.